Welcome to the House Judiciary Committee this Thursday morning, January 15th. And we're going to start with a drive-by of a bill that is primarily in House Human Services, H 545, addressing immunizations. And we're looking specifically at provisions related to immunity and gross negligence and those kind of things. And we'll start with I don't know if you have to have a thorough walkthrough, just what you think is relevant to that question. Katie, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a frequent problem.
Good morning, Katie McDonough, Legislative Council. I will pull up a draft here. Oops, I need sharing capability.
Yes. You're all set.
Okay, success. There we go. So this is a bill that's in Human Services. I think it might be helpful to give you sort of a high level overview of what's going on, and then I can bring you to the section that I think this committee is most interested in. So this is a bill that gives the Commissioner of Health, the Vermont Commissioner of Health, the authority to make recommendations on the adult and child immunization schedule. Right now, a lot of our statutory language is tied to CDC recommendations. This instead would tie them to the recommendations of the commissioner. It provides some parameters that the commissioner would use to make those recommendations, including consulting with an advisory committee and looking at the recommendations of other professional organizations, including the CDC. This bill looks quite long. This language as drafted is it's a sunset on July 1, 2031. So the bill is quite long because it puts back language in place that is currently in statute. So a lot of the language or the sections appear twice. Sort of the impacts of doing this is it allows the department to continue to order immunizations at the lowest cost, assuming that they're meeting the goals of the existing immunization program for the state. It provides continued insurance coverage for immunizations that have currently been covered, as long as they're being recommended by the commissioner. And it also allows a pharmacist to administer an immunization that's under the commissioner's recommendations. So those are sort of the big things that this language does. Let me take you to the language that I think this committee is most interested in.
I don't know if folks saw the text from Nate that we're getting the latest draft. It's being printed out right now, but we have it on the screen. So, yeah.
So this is a draft that Human Services looked at yesterday. They've since made additional changes, and we'll be looking at a new draft. But this is sort of the most recent thinking. So it's this subsection C that they're thinking that you will have the most interest in. It says that a healthcare professional who prescribes, dispenses, or administers immunization in accordance with the recommendations issued pursuant to subsection A, meaning the recommendations of the commissioner, shall be immune from civil and administrative liability for immunization-caused adverse events, unless the healthcare professional's actions regarding prescribing, dispensing, or administering an immunization constituted gross negligence, recklessness, or intentional misconduct. So this is language that when I was drafting this, I borrowed from opioid antagonist statute. We have similar language with regard to the administration of opioid antagonists. So that is where that came from.
So in accordance with the recommendations issued pursuant to subsection A, can we see what subsection A looks like at this point? I wonder how much has changed since.
It's changed a bit. So this is subsection A, that the commissioner shall periodically issue recommendations regarding which immunizations children and adults are recommended to receive, the age at which each immunization is recommended to be given, the number of immunization doses that are recommended to be administered, the recommended amount of time between doses of an immunization, and any other recommendations regarding immunizations necessary to promote the maintenance of public health and disease prevention in the state.
So if they follow those guidelines, those recommendations, then they are immune from liability unless it's gross negligence.
Yes.
But if they do something kind of outside of those recommendations, then that protection doesn't apply. And I'm not sure what that would be, but
Correct. This is tied specifically to the recommendations that would be issued by the commissioner. So if I don't know, if the commissioner recommends 3 doses of a particular immunization and a provider gives 5 doses of it, then, going beyond what was recommended doesn't have these protections connected with that action.
but there may be something else that the doctor or nurse does that has nothing to do with the recommendations that wouldn't be, I can't think of, they accidentally break the person's arm. I don't know the things, but I mean, it's like something that's extreme or not even extreme, but not related to the recommendations on how the doctor is dealing with a particular patient.
This would be tied to an adverse type of reaction related to the administering of the immunization itself.
So how does this work in conjunction with the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program?
So my understanding is that right now
If you could explain what that is as
Yeah.
well.
So that is a federal program based in federal law. Instead of going through a tort law process, if a person has an adverse reaction to an immunization and they're seeking compensation, there's a process set up. It's still a legal process, and many people hire an attorney to help them through the process. But after filing various medical documents and a filing fee, there are attorneys who review the claim and decide if it will be compensated. My understanding is that right now, the immunizations covered still reflect what had been recommended by CDC prior to the most recent changes. My understanding, talking to the immunization expert at the health department yesterday, was that that may be rolled back, so it would be limited to the immunizations that were just recently recommended. This language would provide protection to Vermont providers for the full complement of immunizations that are recommended by the Commissioner of Health in the state, even if those recommendations are broader than what is being recommended at the federal level.
So if somebody suffers an injury though from a vaccine or immunization, and it's not included in what the feds have, what can they do for getting compensation for that injury?
Well, if it's no longer covered under the federal program, I imagine they could file a tort suit.
Okay. But it would be a gross negligence standard that they would.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to clarify, the pharmaceutical industries are immune. Is that right? We could not file a tort against.
That is the federal legislation. And this process, the DSIP was sort of created to allow for this process outside of tort law to happen. It's my understanding that in certain circumstances, depending on the outcome of that process, that there still are avenues to bring a tort claim. But, the process is more limited.
Right. So if if the pharmaceutical company can be found to be at fault, it may be that there could be some way to try to sue them. Otherwise, the tort claim that you were suggesting would be against who? Against the provider, against?
Sorry, and under the federal scenario or the state scenario?
The state scenario.
Okay.
I'm wondering, from Morton's question, when you said they might be able to file a tort suit, like who would they file it against?
So if there was, under this language, if it was believed by the injured party that a provider acted with gross negligence, recklessness, or intentional misconduct, this language wouldn't prohibit any type of suit. They could go forward with that under this language.
And it would just be the provider, not like. the
This
health
just
department.
covers the provider.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program is rolled back to just the vaccines that are approved at the federal level, does that take away the immunity of the pharmaceutical companies for those that are no longer part of that? So
Yeah, I would assume so. I'm sort of
so the
making
tort
this
action
through.
could be, yeah, the tort action would
Could be more.
against the pharmaceutical.
I don't
if it's not
know
covered in that.
If and when that will happen, but it sounds like there is some belief that that could be an outcome of the recommendations being limited by the CDC during the past few weeks.
And to the extent that it is covered by that program, that preempts state law anyway. I mean, we wouldn't be able to go after those pharmaceuticals under state law because that federal law preempts. That's the way you get covered the injury. What we're trying to cover is the doctors, providers who are following the recommendations.
Yes,
Okay.
the Vermont recommendations, yes.
Yeah, Ian, and then Angela.
I think just one thing to note with this is that like the on-table, off-table vaccine, like adverse reaction assessment that's done in the compensation program is very strict. Like, so just because you have an adverse reaction or you have some sort of injury on due to a vaccine that's on the table currently, if you're not, the reaction is not one of the ones that's labeled, like identified, and it's not within the time frame that they identified, then you may not have coverage in the program anyways. So there are actually like quite a few different potential ways where you might have a person who's not going to have an opportunity to access this program, even if they got a vaccine that is in the covered ones right now.
Right, and that's that's the federal law, and again, it exempts what we can do here. Yeah.
And my question is tripling down on this line of questioning because I want to make sure I'm very clear. I understand it correctly because I've gotten a couple of constituent emails and they are worried that we're providing immunity for industry. And I think they mean pharmaceutical industry. And I'm hearing you say that is not at all what we're doing.
This is protection for Vermont healthcare professionals who are administering the immunization in accordance with the Department of Health, the Commissioner of Health's recommendations.
Thank you.
Right, it doesn't provide immunity to industry. I mean, but federal law does.
Yes,
And
federal
that-
law
and that
does.
preempts state law.
And I suppose one might argue that providers are part of the industry. But I'm hearing you say here, I'm hearing that the largest shield that exists is at the federal level. We don't affect that. We can't
This language.
undermine or right. And that what this is, and that this language still allows a path in cases of recklessness, gross negligence, true wrongdoing. There's a chance for a patient to attempt to prove that wrongdoing. We're leaving that door open.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering, until this law is passed, if it is,
Mhm.
if somebody in Vermont, child dies of the measles,
Mhm.
because they could not get the vaccine, what can they, do you know if they can?
That's sort of outside the scope of this piece of
I just
legislation.
wonder,
Yeah.
because it like, if time is of the, I guess I'm trying to figure, I mean, money is not going to bring back somebody who dies of the measles or whatever, but I just, it seems like time is of the essence because we want to make sure people can get the vaccines that are scientifically.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The conversation upstairs is reflecting that they have this taking effect on passage. And I think there's an interest in, it moving through the body quickly so the commissioner could pass recommendations.
Any other questions for Katie? Or did you have more? I assume that
I mean, you're welcome to look at the rest of the bill, but I think that's what you're
No, I
most
think-
interested in.
this is just the part we're supposed to look at.
Okay.
We have other things we need to do.
Okay.
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more,
yeah.
because I'm just not familiar with this area of law. What kind of, is there a Vermont specific adverse event reporting process?
Not that I know of, but the health department is here, so they will tell me if I'm wrong. I
Okay.
think it's just the federal.
Thank you. Okay.
That'll be the next one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Only one other question, just thinking about what we're actually asked to look at here. So the gross negligence standard versus a negligence standard.
Oh, I should have brought my chart. Let me pull up my chart and the other folks are presenting and I can get that for you.
Great.
Great, thank you, Katie.
Yep.
All right, so we'll turn to Lauren Lehman next, who is, I believe, yeah, here in person. I thought for some reason you were going to be.
Let's make sure what the weather is gonna do.
Yeah, I was looking for you in Zoom. All right, nice to have you in person. Thank you for being here.
I'm Lauren Lehman. I'm General Counsel for the Department of Health. And I'll probably just take a step back, if that's okay, to explain the ICP and the just general immunization system at the federal level, because this system did evolve over, the 80s, 90s, and it became, pretty comprehensive to insulate and provide access and protection. So, you've got the FDA that reviews the vaccine and makes sure that it's safe. You've got the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, and the CDC that provide guidance on use. Then you have state, and the CDC provides, communications and guidance and tools for providers to use and state and local health departments to use. And then they were finding that tort cases, which even one tort case, and, adverse events are very, very rare. We're, ballparking, very rare, 1 in a million kind of thing. But they were finding even that one tort lawsuit is very lengthy, very costly, and it's deterring vaccine manufacturers from manufacturing vaccines and providers from taking that risk, right? So in the late 80s, they developed the vaccine injury compensation program, which right now, under current state law or federal law, if there is any lawsuit, civil action over $1,000, it has to go to the ICP. It cannot go in state law, state courts or civil courts or federal courts. It has to. So right now, manufacturers and providers are immune from liability over $1,000 for any vaccine injuries. And as Katie mentioned, there is a table of injuries, and I think you mentioned as well, that are known to be associated within certain timeframes with vaccines. And so if you come in and you petition for compensation and say, I have one of those injuries, you don't have to prove causation. So that's the excuse. They know that it's associated. You will most likely move faster through that compensation system. If you have a unique injury, then they will allow you to prove, you still have an opportunity before judges and all the legal process to prove causation that this injury was caused by the vaccine. And so you're not shut off from compensation. So as was noted, there is those vaccines that are covered by the VICP have to be recommended, have to be, there needs to be an excise tax associated with them from the Congress. And they there's one other factor as well, but it's not easy to add those vaccines. It is easy to remove them through regulation. There's concern at this point in time that this system that is very comprehensive, you've got the access balance with the liability protection versus, the recommendations, is being slowly changed, creating a lot of confusion in the system. And what H545 does is try to replicate what we can of that system on the state level. So allowing we have building our own ACIP, building our own access routes for the vaccines, building recommendations in the state. So we're trying to replicate that. We cannot replicate the entire VICP. But what this liability protection does is take a piece of that, piece we can, and maintain that liability protection for providers who are, like was articulated earlier, acting consistent with the recommendations from this expert committee, from the commissioner. And so it is continuing that liability protection that's already in place, but on a narrower scale. So that's really what we're hoping to do. And what that does is provides, comfort to providers, which allows access, facilitates access, which is really department's interest, is that folks can still access these vaccines and aren't deterred, the providers aren't deterred from providing them because of the risk of one very lengthy tort suit.
Questions, Andrew?
And thank you, and is there anything? Shall I say this? When a vaccine is recommended, or when a number of vaccines are recommended, in most cases, they are still just that, recommended, right? There's no mandate.
Absolutely not.
And so there's always the option for folks to just not get the vaccine.
Yes.
Or whatever vaccines are recommended.
Absolutely. Informed consent, working with your provider, all of those things are in place. There is no mandate here. This is a completely voluntary and.
So, go ahead.
Please go first.
Okay. So we were talking about the manufacturers, and if their vaccine is taken out of the VCIC, is that what it's called? No, VIC. I gotta get my acronyms right.
There's a lot of them here.
That, the federal program.
Yeah.
If they're taken out of the federal program, our bill is not providing any immunization. I mean.
Immunity, liability, and.
Yes, right. We're not providing an escape from liability in this bill for manufacturer. They presumably are needing to deal with that themselves, probably at a national level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So somebody who's injured can, and if it's not under that federal program, presumably they can actually bring a tort action against the manufacturer. They could also bring a tort action here if there's gross negligence. So,
Yes.
so we're not giving complete blanket immunity, which it sounds like the federal program does.
Right.
I mean, if it's over $1,000, it's got to go there, period.
Absolutely.
Here, actually, there is an avenue if it's gross negligence.
Absolutely. And there's not, at least in law, a standard. So if somebody is grossly negligent and somebody brings a compensation claim, it is still considered by the VICP. Here, it would not be. So there are a number of remedies, and they can not only seek that it is protecting physicians who are acting in accordance with the science that the state and an expert committee have said, have reviewed and tested, and they're acting in accordance with that. They should not be held liable if the product causes an injury.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I got a chance to talk to Chair Wood right before committee. So I know that this bill doesn't attempt to touch, I think, the federal regulation about pharmacists. I don't know if it's federal or state regulation about pharmacists giving vaccines to children under the age of 5. And I've heard, and people I've heard from are so far not in Vermont, but I worry about that just given our primary care issue, that it's sometimes very hard to get in to schedule an appointment, especially if somebody's working. The health department has felt that is not an issue worth sort of nudging, or it's not in your wheelhouse to be able to do anything about that.
Out of both of those, I think it's not really, we want to encourage access in the safest and broadest way possible. And I think legislators decided a couple of years ago that this was the way to thread that needle. I think there's an interest in having children younger than 5 go see their PCP or their primary for, reasons other than vaccines, which I think drove that decision. And so I don't think that the health department wanted to question that balance.
I think with the recent changes that came out of CDC about breaking up how many vaccines you can get, it has created an issue because people are going in for their 6-month checkup, but they can't get all the vaccines at the 6-month checkup. And they have to figure out another appointment to get back in. So I totally appreciate that, like, people should see their doctor. I'm just wondering if the health department is gonna like keep an eye out on, like, if that ends up being a barrier for people, and anything that we can be doing to make that easier.
I really think the recommendations from the commissioner could address that issue, because again, those recommendations will include timing, will include dosage, so that it might return, I can't speak on behalf of that expert committee, might return to being able to get all your vaccines at one appointment. But certainly we will keep an eye on access issues. That's a huge public health concern. And if we're noticing a barrier, we will review that.
Ian.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for walking us through, especially the history of the vaccine compensation program. I'm going to try not to testify and just ask a question sort of to you. It sounds like my understanding is this program is in flux on the federal level, that depending on where things land there could be gaps in how someone could seek compensation for an adverse reaction or something like that. And it may have to be a traditional tort claim. And that this bill has nothing to do with that. And that we are not impacting that program at all. And that even if this didn't exist, this bill did not exist, that flux and that question around protections for people is happening no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear that we're not even addressing adverse reaction. Generally, we're talking about injuries here that are associated with the vaccine, which are it's a nuance that I feel protective of, but as a public health nerd. But
Fair. And I apologize for being wrong.
No, not at all. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think part of H545 is recognizing that there's confusion and a lot of change at the federal level, and it's impacting how people are able to access vaccines and what the knowledge, what the guidance is. And so we're just trying to bring it down to a state level, make sure people have the information they need. It's consistent, it's clear, and it's scientifically sound and evidence-based.
Excellent. Thank you.
Not seeing any, we'll go to Stephanie Winters next. Thank you very
So
much
much.
for being here. Thank you. Good morning.
For having me. I have so many answers to a lot of your questions. And first, Stephanie Winters, I am the Deputy Director of the Vermont Medical Society, but I also serve as the Executive Director for the American Academy of Pediatrics Vermont chapter and the Vermont Academy of Family Physicians, along with a slew of other organizations, but those are the main ones I'm here to talk to you today. First, I want to say, Representative Rachelson, a good way of making sure that we have access to primary care would be to support 2 bills in the legislature this year that would strengthen primary care, increase access, which is H680, which just dropped, or if the Senate takes it up first, S197. So those are 2 ways. Instead of trying to find a different way to do it, let's fix our system first. So I'll get off my bully pulpit on that one. So I am here specifically to talk about H545, which is really important to our members and we strongly support. And I will just go through a few of the things high level of why we support this bill and then talk about the immunity piece. So this bill aligns with national trusted organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American College of Physicians, which is internal medicine, and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, also ACIP. So the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. So the commissioner takes all of those recommendations into account, follows up with our own Vermont committee of experts, which we have a lot of, and then makes a decision on what recommendations Vermont should follow. Doing this really provides clarity and consistency for our healthcare professionals and patients. There's so much confusion with all of the evolving measures, whether they follow science and evidence is questionable. And so how can we really shore up Vermont and the health of Vermonters? It strengthens the medical home and care coordination. So that's through standing orders, through our relationships with pharmacies and other licensed professionals to administer vaccines within their scope. And so it really provides central points for care coordination. It preserves the universal and no cost access to recommended immunizations. So that right now, the state covers all of that through health insurance, through state general funds, and that would not change. It would just change that they would follow our health commissioner. It supports a stable vaccine supply and reduces administrative burden. This committee may not have heard much about administrative burden, but I feel like if you ever go to your primary care, you know that there's a lot of red tape that you have to go through to provide healthcare in the state. And so being able to order vaccines through your health department, sort of have them show up at your door and be able to provide them at no cost is really important to provide that stable access. It ensures clinical expertise are central to immunization policy. So the advisory council is named to have researchers, infectious disease, pediatricians, family physicians are obviously our health department. And so it has our Vermont expertise and then follows national guidance from organizations who have been doing this for decades. And then finally, the issue that your committee is looking at specifically, it protects healthcare professionals acting in good faith. So if they follow the commissioner's recommendations, they are protected. That's really important. When we saw some changes in vaccine guidance last fall, patients were coming to their practitioners and saying, I want this vaccine. And practitioners were like, we don't know what we're supposed to do. Are we at risk? Are we liable? Should we do this? What are the recommendations? And this really provides a stable ground in Vermont to be able to make evidence-based decisions for your patients. And I would also say on the access piece about primary care, one, obviously supporting changes to support for primary care, but also especially for children, I would say the access is a little different than in the adult world. And so being able to see your pediatrician, it's a little easier to get in than us adults because family medicine and adult practitioners have a wider range and bigger breadth of responsibilities. But just for kids, it's a little bit different. So just in conclusion, we really support this bill. We hope that you will support the language around immunity, and we do need this now. So that is why it's based on passage. So thank you.
Questions? Angela?
I'm curious if there have been, are you aware of any reports of adverse events in Vermont and how they've adverse, I guess we call them events, and how they've been handled?
I mean, I'm sure that there have been reports. I don't go on the vaccine. Anybody can go on to the registry and see reports and where they're from. So we could certainly get you information. There's always reports and they range in complexity and severity. And so yes, I think that there have been reports. I don't know how the VAERS program has handled them. And so I would just say, I don't know the answer to how they're handled. I think if you call your physician's office or your health professional's office with a concern, they talk you through that. They have shared decision-making and they talk about what the adverse reactions are and ways to help with that. But that is sort of a conversation between your healthcare practitioner and the patient. As far as the national VAERS, I think that's a whole process and how that's handled.
Right, and is that something that the practitioner or the practitioner's office can help guide a patient through it if that's a route that they need to take or want?
Yeah, and the practitioners can report to that. If they feel it's a true relational cause, they report to VAERS. And so there is a role for the health professionals in Vermont to play.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a couple other things. I think I'm going to try to have a straw poll tomorrow on whether we're okay with this language tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning. The reason I'm going to put it off till tomorrow morning is there was somebody who asked to testify and just couldn't fit the person in, but is essentially going to give the same testimony that she gave upstairs in the human services. So if people do want to see that testimony, I think it's somebody who may have sent an email to all of us. Allison Despathy, I think is pronounced how you pronounce it. Her testimony was at 1:50 on Tuesday in Health Human Services. So I'll give folks an opportunity if they do want to see that. She's a community member from Danville, Vermont. So also I reached out to the medical malpractice lawyers community, who would be the kind of entity that would want to bring these kind of cases. Essentially, they're not opposing this. I would say they're being neutral. They didn't feel a need to come in to testify because they're not going to support or oppose. So I just wanted you folks to know that I reached out and I heard from 3 different attorneys in that community who essentially repeated what we've already heard, that this is mostly done through this federal program, which preempts state law. And they didn't have a problem with the rest of what we're doing here. At least they didn't want to come in. They didn't feel a need to testify. So with that, we'll take a break unless there's other questions on how we're proceeding. Yeah, Ken.
We're going to hear from anybody that opposes us?
I think that probably Allison is Despathy, the testimony I mentioned is, I believe she has a different perspective on this. So I would suggest, if you want to see that, I would suggest taking a look. It would be the same testimony here, and we have other witnesses already lined up today, and this came in pretty late at request. If you look at that, and if you feel that we need to take more testimony, we can talk about that tomorrow and decide to do so. So, yeah, I mean, happy to take more testimony if we need to have more testimony. But from what I heard, the testimony today, and you'll have an opportunity to watch what we heard today as well, Zach, and so will Tom and Alicia, so we can all be on the same page. And we can discuss it tomorrow. If we don't take a vote tomorrow and we want more testimony, that's what we'll do.
You told Allison that you weren't interested in hearing from her.
I haven't gotten back to her yet. And I think essentially she said that she would be testifying the same that she already provided testimony. And I will email her as well. So.
Can
Yes.
I just clarify? So, planning to take a straw poll tomorrow unless you hear that folks would like more testimony. And if folks want what, they should just let you know on what topic and who. Okay, great.
Absolutely. All right, with that, we'll take a break until 10 when we're going to turn back to 5:41. The